In part C of the Groovy Google Sheet probability distribution graph shows you how to make a probability distribution graph that will have more than one set of data. And this is again something you will need to be able to do for your summative, and really this is the part that you need for the summative. Part A, you're just making one graph, and in part C you're making a double graph, and this is the one that you're going to be using for the game summative. So in part C we're going to be dealing with multiple sets of data, and oops, I just changed this. Alright, and the data in this sheet shows the ages and years of 2 samples of students at a dance. So in cell D1, the first thing we're going to type, or cell D1, we're going to type in ages. And this is where you would type in the intervals of the ages, but in this case you really don't need to type in intervals, because the lowest number is 14 and the highest number is 18. And if we don't really need ranges, because you could just type in 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's 5 bins, or 5 buckets that you're going to have. So when you make these, they don't actually have to be intervals. They're only intervals if you type in these numbers and there's more than 10 of them, because you can't have, or you shouldn't have, more than 10 bars. So you don't always need intervals. So we can just type in the individual values, and that will take care of all of these, and you'll end up with 5 buckets. In cell E1, you're going to type in frequency and use the frequency formula, just like we did before. So it's equals frequency, and open a bracket, and then you start with the data. So for the first sample, this is the data for the first sample, and then comma, and then these are the upper boundaries of the buckets, but in this case our upper boundaries are the same as the lower boundary. And press enter, and it fills in the frequency. So there are 2 people that are 14, 6 people that are 15, etc. And again, you want to make sure that that says 0, which means you've got everyone counted in a category. Then in cell E18, you want to add up those frequencies so that we have a total, and we'll be able to change those into percents. Oops. So there's 20 people. And in cell F1, we're going to type in probability, and then we're going to change each of those numbers into probabilities using this formula, just what we did before. Probability, and it's equal to, so the probability of someone from sample 1 being 14 is 2 divided by the total, which is 20, and make that an absolute cell reference and fill it down, and that's your probability distribution table for sample 1. Now, you can create a probability distribution graph using columns D and F. So once again, highlight D, and then press the Control or the Command button, highlight F, and then insert a chart. And we're going to make that an stepped area chart. And this time I'm not going to have you change the opacity to dark. We're just going to leave it like this. And there is your probability distribution graph for sample 1. Now, starting in cell D11, we're going to do the all the same things for sample 2. So starting in D11, we're going to type in ages. So once again, 14 up to 18. And then frequency. So the formula is equals frequency, open bracket. First highlight the data. So this is going to be for sample 2, then comma, then highlight the buckets, and enter. Make sure that says 0. Add up all the frequencies. Now it should be the same as 20. And now make the probabilities. So that's going to equal 4 people divided by the sum, which is 20. Make it an absolute cell reference. And then fill down. And now let's make a probability distribution graph. So highlight the ages, highlight the probabilities, and insert chart. Make it stacked. Sorry, stepped. I don't know why I keep saying stacked. Make it stepped. And there's the probabilities there. And since you have more than one graph, you should change the title. So this is ages of sample 1. And this one, this is ages of sample 2. So you can see there a comparison of each. But one thing you can see here is that even though the x-axis is the same, the y-axis is different. You could go in and change the y-axis so that they're the same, and they would look like these graphs here. So they would both go up to 0.4. So here you could, if you double click on there, it brings you right into the customize where you want to be. And we'd want the max to be 0.4. But what I'm going to show you to do is to put both of the graphs on the same grid. And this is the reason you don't want the opacity to be dark. You want to keep it lighter. So if you're going to make two different graphs, you need to make sure that the axes are the same so that you can compare them. If you're making both of them on the same graph, then you don't need to worry because they will make them on the same grid and have the same scale for both of them. So to make the two histogram or probability distribution graphs on the same grid, first thing you have to do is actually change these to not read probability anymore. What you want to change these to is what the two different strata are. So this is going to be changed to say sample 1, and this is going to be changed to say sample 2. And that's the only way to get the legend to work properly. So change F1 to read sample 1 and F11 to read sample 2. Now, this next part doesn't always work. Sometimes it's glitchy and it doesn't work properly, but there's a fix down below. Just pay attention to the instructions. So what you're going to do is highlight these cells. So start with D1 to D6, then click the control button, and then F1 to F6, and then F11 to F16. So basically you've got what's going to go on the x-axis and the two different sets that will go on the y-axis, and then insert chart, and we're going to change that to a stepped area chart. Now as you can see, it actually only picks up the first one, so in this case. Sometimes you'll be lucky and it'll pick up both, and other times it won't. Alright, so if you don't get what it's supposed to look like, it says here, sometimes the double-stepped area chart doesn't work even if you follow the instructions. So in that case, in the chart editor, under Setup, you have to do the following in this order, but you only have to do whatever steps are needed, because different computers will glitch in different ways. So under Series, make sure you do it in this order. Under Series, if this is blank, then follow these steps. You would click, if this was blank, it would say Add Series. You would click that, and then you would type this in. And then under X-axis, if this was blank, then it would say Add X-axis. And then you'd get this table icon that looks like this, and then you'd type this in. So that's not the case here. Now, to get that second graph, again, back to under Series. If you don't see Sample 2, which we don't, click where it says Add Series. Click on that table icon there and type in F11 to F16. Oops, F16. Alternately, you can drag this away and drag the graph away, and then you could just highlight that instead. And then after you click OK, you now get the double bar graph, or sorry, double histogram, which is the same as a probability distribution. And you can change this to say ages of students at school dance. You got the legend there, but now the problem is it doesn't pick up the probability here. So you could go under chart title and click vertical axis title, but you can also just double click on this and just change it to probability. And then under legend, you can change where you want it. If you want it over to the right, so you can put it at the top, the bottom, the left, the right. You can put it inside the grid. You can put it wherever you want. It doesn't matter where you put it. But please make sure for the summative that you know how to make this double probability distribution graph. You do not want to go into Series and change the opacity, because if you do that, the problem is, I mean, you can see here where the blue is. It just doesn't, in my opinion, look as nice as it does if you leave it like that. I think it's easier to see where the bars are if you leave it like that. In some circumstances, it will show up under Series D1 to D6 under here. If it does, just delete it. But that's what it should look like. Sometimes it's blank in both spots. Sometimes part of it's filled in. It's just a glitch.